Good morning. It's Wednesday, August 2nd. And I want to talk a little bit about Florida. Florida has never been one of my favorite places. My in-laws retired to Florida. My parents retired to Florida. And I never really thought it was a great place to live. Although they were happy there. I cannot say that they were unhappy there. And they lived in wonderful communities and everybody seemed nice. But at that particular time, most of those people were as old as I am now. So it never really appealed to me, but it was a good place to go visit. And why am I talking about Florida? I'm not talking about Florida because of the political situation there, where they have a governor who is a total asshole. I'm talking about a disease that is spreading and increasing in Florida. And that disease is leprosy. And I haven't heard about leprosy in a long, long time. But it seems that leprosy is on the upswing, and nearly 20% of the cases across the country is coming from the center of Florida. Center of Florida contains about 81% of the cases reported in the state of Florida. So there's been a huge surge in leprosy in Florida. And leprosy is technically and scientifically known as Hansen's disease. It's a chronic infectious disease that primarily affects the skin and the peripheral nervous system. And when somebody has leprosy, you can see it. There's lumps on their skin. Their fingers become distorted. And the number of leprosy cases in the southeastern states has more than doubled in the past decade. And most of that doubling has taken place in Florida. So even if I loved Florida, I don't know if I would be prepared to go to Florida, given the fact that there's leprosy running loose in the state. So the situation in Florida is such that the CDC has recommended that you carefully investigate before you go to Florida. Because going there, you must consider that you are going to a place that has this population of leprosy running loose. And you should be aware of that. However, I seriously doubt that anybody who gets ready to go on vacation to Florida has even thought about thinking about what diseases they're liable to contact in Florida. So this is probably not a big national deal because I found this on some backwater newspaper about the story about leprosy. And there's many new cases that are cropped up in Central Florida. Now many, I'm not talking millions, I'm not talking hundreds of thousands of people, but enough people are getting this disease in Florida that it doesn't make too much sense to go there if you are liable or susceptible to something, right? And there are many out there who believe that you can get leprosy from wild animals. But that's not true. There's no traditionally known risk factor associated with getting leprosy from some wild animal. And leprosy has been virtually uncommon in the United States since the last epidemic, which took place in 1983. And since then, there's been a drastic reduction in the annual number of documented cases from the 1980s to 2000. But now, there's been a gradual increase in the incidence of leprosy in the U.S. And why do you think that is? I have no idea, except probably that nobody was paying attention to it and it appeared a couple of times and then all of a sudden it's on the move again. Here's something that I learned, that there are diseases in this country that are known as reportable diseases, which means any time you get it, you have to report it within a day. And leprosy is a reportable disease in Florida, and it's monitored through what they call passive surveillance. So that means everybody is on the lookout for this disease, and if they find out about it, they're required to report that leprosy, that incident of leprosy, by the next business day. And I think that sucks that they merely call it the next business day. That means if you find out late on Friday afternoon, you're going to wait till Monday morning? That's not what I would consider an emergency situation. But nevertheless, The next business day is required if you spot a case of leprosy or you find out about a case of leprosy. And contact tracing is critical to identify where the disease came from and to be able to reduce the transmission of this disease by getting that contact information. And once the CDC finds out about it, then it publishes an alert. In fact, just recently, the CDC published an alert after 5 cases of locally transmitted malaria were reported over 2 months. 4 cases in Florida and 1 in Texas. It's the first time in 20 years that locally transmitted malaria had been reported in the U.S. And according to the health department in Florida, there have been 7 local cases of malaria treated as of July 20th. And all of those cases were isolated to Sarasota County. But you see, you got to be on the alert, because when these things happen, you are not the only one that is affected. You are an important cog in the wheel of keeping this country healthy and safe. So if any of you come in contact with any kind of strange disease, it would be very good to report it. Now, I know that us in this region are not necessarily thinking about something like that. I know when I don't feel well, I just take a couple of aspirins, or I go to bed early and get a good night's sleep, and it's gone in the morning. If I had one of these diseases, I wouldn't even know about it until maybe it was too late. So I think that in situations like this, the public has to know that this is going around and that we have to report it. And that may take a couple of weeks before somebody realizes that there's too many of these contagious diseases cropping up in one area or the other. And then you got to put out some kind of local or national alert. But it's an interesting factor that a disease can crop up out of nowhere, and all of a sudden it can reach the edges of a pandemic or an epidemic, or even just a cluster of people having this one disease in one location. And it's important for the rest of the communities around that area to understand what's going on, because you don't want it spread innocently. So disease in this country is not totally under control. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but just keep your eye on the ball. If you feel sick, get the proper care. And then if it needs to be spread around, you must do so. Have a great day.